Yeah, Bertie, if you would, I can easily add time myself, but if we'd stop the clock when these kind of interferences take place, it'd be appreciated. With that, Senator Johnson.
If you forgot the question, it was explain your comments that Russia is predictable, basically, and that Russia does not think like we do. Expand on that.
Well, in my experience of both dealing with Russia and representatives of Russian government and Russian entities, and then as the length of time I've spent in Russia as an observer, my experience with the Russians are that they're very calculating, they're very strategic in their thinking, and they develop a plan.
The world's most vulnerable communities as expendable. In our home state of Texas, people are resisting dated pipelines. Whether or not you become Secretary of State, oil is dead and people will not stop. Senators, be brave. Stop this man. Protect the vulnerable. Senators, be brave. Protect this man. Protect the vulnerable.
Apologize for that, Mr. Tillerson. I can maybe answer the question unimpeded.
No, I've found the Russians to be very strategic in their thinking, very tactical, and they generally have a very clear plan that they've laid before them. And so in terms of, when I make the statement they're not unpredictable, if one is able to step back and understand what their long-term motivation is, and you see that they're going to chart a course, then it's an understanding of how are they likely to carry that plan out, and where are all of the elements of that plan that are on the table. And in my view, the leadership of Russia has a plan. It is a geographic plan that is in front of them, and they are taking actions to implement that plan. They're judging responses, and then they're making the next step in the plan based upon the response. And in that regard, they are not unpredictable. If Russia does not receive an adequate response to an action, they will execute the next step of the plan.
So be a little more specific. Summarize that plan that you see that they have.
Well, Russia, more than anything, wants to reestablish its role in the global world order. They have a view that following the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were mistreated in some respects in the transition period. They believe they deserve a rightful role in the global world order because they are a nuclear power. And they're searching as to how to establish that. And for most of the past 20-plus years since the demise of the Soviet Union, they were not in a position to assert that. They have spent all of these years developing the capability to do that, and I think that's now what we are witnessing is an assertion on their part in order to force a conversation about what is Russia's role in the global world order. And so the steps being taken are simply to make that point, that Russia is here, Russia matters, and we're a force to be dealt with. And that is a fairly predictable course of action they're taking. I think the important conversation that we have to have with them is, does Russia want to now and forever be an adversary of the United States? Do you want this to get worse, or does Russia desire a different relationship? We're not likely to ever be friends. I think, as others have noted, our value systems are starkly different. We do not hold the same values. But I also know the Russian people because of having spent so many years in Russia. there is scope to define a different relationship that can bring down the temperature around the conflicts we have today. And I think as Secretary Gates alluded to and as Secretary Nunn alluded to, both in their opening remarks, dialogue is critical so that these things do not spin out of control. We need to move Russia from being an adversary always to a partner at times, and on other issues we're going to be adversaries. It's not unlike my comments I made on China. At times China is friendly and at times China is an adversary. But with Russia, engagement is necessary in order to define what is that relationship going to be, and then we will know how to chart our own plan of action to respond to that.
In my mind, if I take a look at the spectrum of America's relationship with different nations, you have friends and allies, you have friendly rivals, you have unfriendly adversaries, you have enemies. And right now you're basically putting Russia in the unfriendly adversary category.
Well, unfriendly to enemies. I think at this point they clearly are in the unfriendly adversary category. I hope they do not move to enemy, because that would imply even more direct conflict with one another.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? This is the student master teacher, Mr. I Stay Woke, Chris Monroe, and we're moments away from the Donald Trump press conference. They're going to come in and grill him. They're going to ask him all these questions, and he's going to do what? He's going to do what? He's going to say, I ain't answering that, buddy. I'm about to be president in what? 9 days and a wake up, 8 days and a wake up. What you talking about? So are you ready for the next president to come in and shake up the game and possibly drain the swamp? Or will the swamp just overfill? What's up, Annette? What's up, woke bloke? What's going on? All the people watching on Periscope and the people watching over on Facebook Live. I'd like to ask one thing of you. If you'd share this out to your Twitter, share it out to your Facebook. And if you're over here watching on Periscope, go ahead and invite your followers. He's going to say he's going to build a really big wall. We're going to build that wall. Believe me, you don't even need this press conference. I'm going to do it. Nothing will stop me. And guess who's going to pay for that wall? Let me ask you, who's going to pay for that wall? Who you think? It's a huge wall, but who do you think's going to pay? Mexico! That's right. So we're going to see what happens. Some people say Mexico's going to pay. Some people say we're going to pay. Nobody knows who's going to pay. All I know is you illegals, you can't stay. And I guess that's how it goes down. But we're about 7 minutes out. They're going to be having this press conference, and it's going to go down. Trump should pay and let Mexico pay him back. Yeah, right. Ha. Ha ha. Mexican president, he ain't paying for that frickin' wall. Yeah, that was the ex-president when he said that. But what kind of power does he have? We'll find out in a few momentos. So what kind of questions do you think they're going to ask President-elect Trump? Will they ask him good questions? Will they ask him silly questions? Will they ask him questions that we already know the answer to? Is they going to ask the same question 3 times over and over and over again in different ways to make him try to answer it when he didn't answer it the first or the second time? You never know. All kind of foolishness will begin in just a few minutes. And for those who don't know, my name is Chris Monroe, the student master teacher, Mr. I Stay Woke. I bring the news and the information to you, and that's to help you make better decisions in your life. I do the Chris Monroe Show each and every Monday night. That comes on 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, where we talk about news, politics, current events, and a whole lot more. It's a call-in radio show. You get to call in and say what's on your mind, and you can Skype in as well, so we can get you on the screen so we can see your face, see your eyeballs, so we can know exactly when you are lying. What's going on, Black Guru, over on Periscope? So they're going to ask about the Clinton Foundation. That's what they're saying on Facebook Live. What's going on, Kyle? Matter of fact, who's all in here? Go ahead and put your name in and where you're from. We'll give you some shout outs before we get this grilling going, before we fire up this grill. Trump won't take it as a grilling, though. He'll just ignore him and tell him to sit down. I'm not answering that. Sit down. Like he told that guy that was from Univision back in the day. Sit down. I'm not answering that. Sit down. What's up, Journey from Alabama? Woke bloke over here on Periscope from Jersey. Jersey Shore. From Jersey. Where you from, fool? Jersey, man. Shatera representing that ATL. Kyle over here from Raleigh, North Carolina. North Kakalaki. Newport News, Virginia. What's happening? Candace from North Carolina as well. I see ya. I see ya. North Carolina seem like that's the place they've been jumping, huh? Them Carolinas. I know to stay away from South Carolina because I ain't playing. Russell out of Central California. It never rains in Southern California, so you say I'm staying in Central so I can get some rain. I know how it is. I know how it is. But like I say, go ahead and share this out. We'll be getting it going in less than 5 minutes, and we're going to listen in over here on what they're talking about. Rose in Alabama, what's happening? Marion from Chi-Town, I see ya, I see ya. Annette from San Diego, representing that California love. California love, I can't see ya. Who said that? Tupac back. But we about to get it going here in just a few minutes. Thanks for all the hearts. Thanks for all the thumbs up over on Facebook. Thanks for the love. Ranch needs rain, reproduce food. Oh, okay. You got some food, you need some rain. Okay. So you in Central California. That's the better place to be, right? Cool, cool. So let's see what they're yakking about over here as we prepare for the breaking news. Donald Trump press conference just minutes away right here. As a matter of fact, don't forget, while we got a few minutes here, to support our sponsors. They're the ones who make this all possible for you. Don't forget them. Lizabitty.com and Bud360.net and iShopWoke.com. If you shop woke, you may become woke. Because, you know, I am Mr. I Stay Woke. So let's get it going here. We'll listen in and see what kind of questions they're giving this nominee by the Trump campaign, or the Donald. Is he still known as the Donald? I don't know. Call him Mr. President. He said, call him number 45. Call me 45. I'm number 45. Believe me, I'll be the best president you ever seen. Call me 45.
Interests. The State Department has described Russia as having an authoritarian political system dominated by President Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, Freedom House currently puts Russia in a category of countries like Iran with very restricted political rights, ruled by one part or military dictatorships, religious hierarchies, or autocrats. Do you agree with that characterization of Russia and Vladimir Putin?
I would have no reason to take exception.
Senator Rubio and Senator Cardin both talked about some of those people who have been victims of the Putin authoritarian regime in Russia. And behind me is a poster with a recent New York Times story. I quote, "More of Kremlin's opponents are ending up dead." I'd like to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter the article into the record.
Without exception. Objection.
I think a picture is always worth 1,000 words, and when you put a face to Sergei Magnitsky, as this poster does, and see two other victims of the authoritarian regime in Russia, I think it speaks to what's happening there and how we should think about the country and dealing with President Putin. So I understand what Senator Nunn said, and former Senator Nunn and Secretary Gates said when they talked about the need to have dialogue with Russia and to continue a mill-to-mill relationship. But I also think it's important for us to understand who we're dealing with. In 2008, you notably said that there's no respect for the rule of law in Russia today. Do you think that continues to be true?
That is still the case, yes.
So I think you can probably understand, Mr. Tillerson, why some of us are very concerned about the President-elect's statements praising Vladimir Putin's leadership, his intelligence, including after being reminded of his ruthless persecution of political enemies, And after receiving compelling...
We're going to break away from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee confirmation hearings for Rex Tillerson to become the next Secretary of State. The President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, getting ready to hold a news conference momentarily, the first news conference in some 6 months, certainly the first news conference since he was elected President of the United States. The news conference, Jake, takes on added significance given all the developments that have happened over the past few days.
That's right. We were originally told that I think it's been more than 168 days since he had that last press conference in which, you might remember, he invited Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. But moving along from that, he has said that he will introduce the standards by which he will wall himself off from his global business empire. And then, of course, in the last day, CNN and other media organizations, the Washington Post and the New York Times and others, have reported that on Friday, at a briefing with the top intelligence officials of this country, there were materials included, a 2-page annex to the Intelligence Committee report, suggesting that Russians claim to have damaging information on the president-elect, and also that Russians claim that there were communications between emissaries of both the campaign and the Kremlin throughout the election. It's a lot to ask about, a lot to dive into. In addition, of course, there are so many issues that President-elect Trump has yet to address in terms of not just Russia, but Syria, tax reform, and much more.
We're told he will open with a statement, an opening statement. We assume it is on his effort to eliminate conflicts of interest with his business empire. That's what the original news conference was supposed to take place a month ago, was delayed until today, and then he'll answer reporters' questions. We don't know if it'll be few reporters' questions, a lot of reporters' questions. Certainly this subject will come up. He reacted very angrily on Twitter today.
That's right. Well, we had reached out to the Trump transition to get a comment, a response to the facts that we had laid out with multiple government officials talking about the Intelligence Committee report and the briefing on Friday. We did not get a statement from the Trump transition, but President-elect Trump did issue a statement later on talking about fake news and a political witch hunt. We weren't sure if he was talking about our report or the fact that another news organization had printed, I think fairly irresponsibly, an entire dossier on which some of the annex that we referred to had been based. But we now await President-elect Trump's response not only to the stories of the last day, but also questions from reporters. He has not faced questions from potentially adversarial press in quite some time. After that July press conference, he pretty much stuck, with a couple exceptions, pretty much stuck to safe spaces, reporters who wanted him to be elected president, anchors on channels that were rooting for him openly, and we're hoping that there are going to be some challenging questions at this press conference, respectful but challenging, about this report, this allegation, and also much more going forward in terms of what kind of president he's going to be, what kind of administration he's going to have.
Jim Sciutto, and among the tweets, the latest tweets, once again, he seems to be at bitter odds with the U.S. intelligence community.
No question, and let's be clear, he has tweeted a lot of things, and he's alleged fake news, etc. He and his team have not answered the essential question of our report, which was that he was briefed on this, he and the President Obama, that the FBI is investigating this, as are Republican and Democratic lawmakers. He has not answered that essential question yet in any public comment.
And also, just to add, the question about the underlying charges and the 2-page dossier, the 2-page synopsis provided by the intelligence community is very different from this 35-page dossier, which is full of all sorts of uncorroborated and unsubstantiated reports that we did not report on. But this 2-page dossier, which we understand, this 2-page synopsis, which we understand to have been fairly broad in terms of its descriptions, the basic questions for President-elect Trump are: were there contacts between anyone related to his camp, emissaries, surrogates, whomever, and anyone related whatsoever to the Russian government? And do Russians have any damaging information, financial or personal, as they claim to have?
You know, Gloria, this news conference taking place only a few days before the presidential inauguration. The stakes clearly for the president-elect to do well, to explain what he understands is going on. The stakes are enormous.
Well, you know, initially this press conference seemed to be just geared towards the question of how Donald Trump is going to divest himself and how he's going to deal with the conflicts that arise between his company and which is all over the world, and his job as President of the United States. And it seems very clear that we've learned in the last few weeks that his sons are going to run the company effectively, and he's going to try and separate himself. So we'll have to see how he can do that. I mean, it's very difficult for somebody like Donald Trump to just put everything into a blind trust, because we've never had this kind of a situation where you have a multi-billionaire real estate investor as President of the United States. But having said that, that was going to be the main topic of this. Now, given the reporting of CNN and others yesterday, I think this is going to turn into questions about just what the relationship was between the Trump campaign and or emissaries from the Trump orbit, even if they weren't members of the campaign, and people in Russia. And I think questions have been raised about whether there was any communication, whether that was done to effectively undermine the candidacy of Hillary Clinton. And I think that reporters are going to want to know answers to these questions. We have an idea of what Donald Trump might say, but I do think that there's going to be an awful lot of questions about what did you do and when did you do it, or what did people in your campaign do?
But also looking forward, I mean, if you sort of take a step back and think about how extraordinary it is that we are a week and 2 days away from him being right back there, becoming the 45th president of the United States, and heading into that, pretty remarkable moment. He is at war with the intelligence community, which is only escalating after your report, instead of taking a step back and perhaps trying to think about, well, maybe this is an example of why it's not the greatest idea in the world for a president to be openly berating the intelligence community. He doubles down, triples down on it. And it's really, really remarkable, given the fact that, Jim, you cover these guys every day. The intelligence community, they're not perfect. They have flaws.
They've made some big mistakes.
They've made some big mistakes. But at the end of the day, when he becomes the president, they are there to work for him. They are the ones who are going to he's going to be sending out on secret clandestine missions that no one else is going to know about. They're the ones he's going to have to rely on about a missile in North Korea and a whole host of other things. And the fact that he is coming in to the presidency at such way beyond odds, really at war with these people, it is
They're going to inform every key national security decision this president has to make. Does North Korea have a nuclear missile?
Exactly.
Is there a terrorist attack pending on the U.S. homeland? Is Russia violating nuclear agreements? The list, where to send U.S. forces into danger's way. They're going to inform him. So the question becomes, is the way the relationship's starting is fundamentally, not just for him and his political fortunes, it is fundamentally dangerous for the country.
Well, let me also say I want to take issue with this. Okay. Because you're suggesting he's at war with the intelligence community. He's at war with the leaders of the intelligence community. He's at war with the people who have presented this assessment. These are political leaders. I mean, these are people appointed by Barack Obama. To say he's at war with the person in the bowels of the CIA or the DI, wherever it is ridiculous.
But where do they get their information?
Because there is a lot of controversy within those agencies right now about the assessment that was given.
That's not true.
Oh, there is.
There's broad and confident agreement in the agencies. Early on, there was some reporting about disagreement between the CIA and FBI. We've debunked that. In fact, it is the confident assessment, and those assessments don't come from the political leaders. Those assessments come from the analysts who analyze the intelligence.
I can tell you that I work as a board member of a cybersecurity company, and I do talk to people in that field and in that area, and I can tell you they're talking to people in the bowels of that organization that don't feel that way.
So what are they specifically objecting to?
Well, first off, to suggest that this is a hack. It was not a hack. It was a phishing.
It was phishing on John Podesta, a hack on the DNC.
That led to the opening up of those files.
They call it an influence operation. That's what it's called.
The bottom line is that the idea of pointing to things that say, oh, well, this clearly shows as Russia. If you know anything about this area, the bottom line is if Russia did this, you wouldn't know it, because they would be 5 steps removed. They wouldn't leave breadcrumbs to say, oh, well, this is obviously Russia. If it was obviously Russia, it's probably the intent to show that it was obvious.
Aside from the specifics, maybe you're right that there is a disconnect between some of the leadership in the intelligence community and some of the rank and file. But to Jim's point, the fact that this is so public right now does put in danger the rank and file, the officials who are out and who are trying to interface with assets and officials and counterparts in very dangerous parts of the world.
And
they're going to go back to the officials and say, why should I trust you? Why should I believe you? Your president-elect doesn't even believe.
And
I would say
think
that will be resolved when, in 2 weeks, new leadership of those organizations, and those leaders will actually do the work and give the president, I think, what he will see as more of an unbiased.
Are you saying that James Clapper and James Comey are complete, and John Brennan are complete partisans? Mike Rogers are complete partisans?
I would say that that the document they had was more of a political document that I've seen in a long time.
Let's bring in Simone Sanders, if she hasn't had a chance to say something.
I want to get Simone in a moment, but Senator, Donald Trump, the President-elect of the United States, tweeted 3 hours ago, intelligence agencies should never have allowed this fake news to leak, quote, leak into the public. One last shot at me. Are we living in Nazi Germany?
That's what I was going to say, Wolf. So Donald Trump is literally, not only has he disparaged women, people of color, he is now attacking the intelligence community. So how are they able to do their job out there in the streets? Are you saying that in 2 weeks, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is going to feel better about the information he's getting? I definitely don't think that's how it works. This is dangerous. This is not a partisan issue. A foreign entity has meddled in our elections process. They are trying to undermine our democracy, and that's something across the board we should all be concerned with. Look, perhaps Donald Trump is concerned that he's not a legitimate president. He needs to deal with those issues, but he is about to assume, the highest office in the land, and he has to step into this. And I'm just shocked that this is what's happening, disparaging our intelligence community.
I just want to bring in David Axelrod, who's joining us, I believe, from Chicago. David, you're one of our senior political advisors. I wonder if you can tell us more. I've heard this tale told that when George W. Bush was handing over the reins to Barack Obama 8 years ago this month, one of the bits of advice he told him was, and you'll pardon my language, don't piss off the intelligence community.
I don't think your language was that offensive there, Jake. But yes, I think that was, I think that was part of the message that that he delivered. Look, Jim went over some of the issues. I'd add another, which is North Korea and the threats that Kim Jong-un has made in recent days toward the U.S. Presidents have to rely on this intelligence. And here's the issue. If, in order to impeach what you find unfavorable reporting, you go to war with the intelligence community and try and undermine their credibility, and we've just heard some of that here, then how are people to react when you present them with intelligence and say you're going to make a decision based on that intelligence after having impeached the intelligence community? It is a very, very dicey proposition for the president-elect to be doing this, and he may come to regret that down the line when he has to make some very sensitive decisions.
But Senator Santorum, I suppose what you're saying is this problem will go away when Dan Coats replaces James Clapper, assuming that happens, and he has the leaders he wants heading the intelligence community.
I think he believes that this was an over-politicized process, and that he sort of rejects that out of hand, based in part based on his own knowledge of what he saw and what he didn't see, and the information that he's been able to gather. So this is an issue right now. It's a big issue. I agree with it, but I think it will be not as big an issue once his people get in charge, and he'll be able to see the facts behind it.
But another part of this really is the fact that senior Republicans in Congress, most notably John McCain, Lindsey Graham, we heard Marco Rubio questioning Mr. Tillerson today about Russia and Putin. These people believe that there ought to be a special committee to just peel this back layer by layer, take a look at this, whether you have new people in charge or not. They believe that it is their job as Congress. Why shouldn't they do that?
All right, here comes the President-elect of the United States. He's walking into this room over at Trump Tower, the lobby Trump Tower in New York City.
Good morning.
Surrounded by his 2 adult sons and his daughter Ivanka. Let's listen in.
United States. It's an opportunity to be here today to allow the President-elect to take your questions. After the President-elect makes some remarks, he will introduce Ms. Sherry Dillon, a prominent attorney in Washington, D.C. with the prestigious firm of Morgan Lewis, who structured the agreements pursuant to the President's business arrangements, and she will give brief remarks. Before we start, I want to bring your attention to a few points on the report that was published in BuzzFeed last night. It's frankly outrageous and highly irresponsible for a left-wing blog that was openly hostile to the President-elect's campaign to drop highly salacious and flat-out false information on the internet just days before he takes the oath of office.